What is up, YouTube? It's Kingfisher745, and welcome to the brand new debut episode of Breaking the Meta. This series is going to be all about breaking down the most popular teams on defense, the end goal being to try to force some variation in PvP, hence the name Breaking the Meta. So in each episode of this series, we're going to study, and we're going to break down one of these popular defensive teams. But before we get into our first episode, I first want to thank Jameson at AJ Designs for our series graphic, and secondly I want to thank Agent Dead for the inspiration behind this series idea. So with that being said, I hope everyone enjoys this episode, and even more importantly I hope it helps. Alright, so the team we're looking at this time around is going to be none other than Groot and Gamora. So first things first, what do we know about Groot? What makes him special and why is he being used on defense? Quite simply, he's a protector and a guardian. The fact that he's a guardian means he's going to gain all the other benefits from the other guardians, namely Gamora, who's going to give him guaranteed hit, and the guardian insignia, which is going to give him survival training. Then in return, he's going to make the other guardians immune to fatal blow. Plus, he's going to cause them to take 50% less damage when their health is below 35%. Sadly, there's nothing we can do about him being a guardian, but we certainly can do something about him protecting. And also there's going to be a way to deal with that whole immune to fatal blow thing. But we'll focus on that a little bit later in this episode. Next, let's take a close-up look at Gamora and see exactly what makes her tick. Gamora is being used because, well, she has the Guardian benefits, but also because of Cower, Despair, and Doom. Not to mention she does have Fatal Blow on Execute as well. But Cower is very nasty because it's going to stop you from doing actions, and it can happen at the worst times. Then Despair is unpreventable and practically unstoppable. Then lastly, if Doom is able to go off, it's going to do a very large amount of damage. Oh, and of course you can't ignore the fact that she's going to give your other Guardians attacks guaranteed to hit. Honestly, she has very little weaknesses, and that's why she's a great hero to use right now in defense. But we're going to focus on how to defeat this team overall. First of all, there's plenty of different ways to go about this, but one great character to help deal with this team is going to be Iron Fist. We know that Groot's going to protect against single target and area attacks. However, Iron Fist level 1 has Cornered, which removes and prevents protect effects. Once you corner Groot, you can hit anyone on his team, including Gamora, who truthfully may be your number one target. By the way, there's plenty of heroes and weapons that can place Cornered on Groot, so you don't have to necessarily use Iron Fist. But there's another great benefit to using this hero. Depending on turn order, usually whether or not he gets to go before Gamora, you can go ahead and use his level 9 Heart of Shou Lao, and then his level 6 Praying Lotus. This is going to prevent debuffs, so basically when Groot uses his level 2, it's not going to do anything to your team. And then also, most importantly, it's going to stop Cower and Doom. No, it won't stop Despair, pretty much nothing can. But as far as that debuff, you just have to outlast it. It wears off eventually, and one thing about this team is, at least without Doom, they're not going to do that much damage. Then my other big counter I use to go against this team is to have some way to exhaust them. Typically the agent will wear the Tactician Empowered costume, and they're always going to have multiple quick action items. First of all, you know they're going to use the Guardian Insignia, and then usually they'll have healing or maybe something like the Neurotrope. This particular agent is a generalist, but he does also have quick actions. Oh, and who can forget they'll oftentimes have the signpost, so exhausted is going to go a long way. Before the weather control device, I used to use a character like Havoc, and we will take a look at that team up next. Also, depending on the turn order, you can stop Groot from using his level 2 and then attack, but that's only going to work if you get a turn before him. He's basically going to get that off first turn, and then it's going to be done. So those are just a few ways to really cut down on this team's potency. And then another great thing to have is something with Brutal Strike. The Hand of Apocalypse works great. If a weapon or attack with Brutal Strike gets the final blow on any of these characters, including Groot, it's going to take them down. He won't even go into his cutting form. So just keep that in mind. And by the way, here you can see Despair is on my team, but there's no trace of Cower or Doom, and that's what prevent debuffs can do for you as well. Or you could try to use the Mystic and maybe take down Gamora before she can even use her shout. In fact, another way to deal with this team, which I'm unfortunately not going to be able to fit into this episode, is the fact that you can use Stealthy and psychic attackers to ignore Groot altogether. So that's right, you can just go back to basics. I had a lot of success using Emma Frost and Nightcrawler, believe it or not. Emma and Psychic Tap really can do a number on this team, because you know, other than demoralizing Shout, Gamora is going to attack, and then Groot is always going to attack. So Mental Anguish will practically beat him by itself. Just keep that in mind, especially if you're facing a lot of this team. As far as us finishing this first match, I'm going to make sure they stay exhausted, and then I'm going to try to finish off the enemy Gamora. With momentary advantage, we're going to get up to 2 attacks, and so I think that the Hand of Apocalypse should be able to take her down. Alright, so here goes our very first shot, and it looks like it's going to be a good one. It's a 25k epic overkill. So now with our second attack, let's try to finish this fight. Well, sadly, he must have known the 5Ds of Dodgeball: dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. But the Breaker of Worlds will definitely end this fight. In fact, let's use a World Breaker, and then Meteor Swarm will take its final toll. Now in this second part, I want to show you the older alternative team that I used to use to defeat Groot and Gamora. So for this one, we're going to use Havoc and Pestilence Beast. Now Havoc is great for a number of reasons. First of all, you can just spam his level 6 Plasma Spheres, and it's going to deal damage. You can put the Ionizing AISO on it to stack radiation exposure. It's going to exhaust the entire enemy team. And the reason it does this is because it bypasses protection with Catastrophic. So that's right, another great way to get around Groot is with a Catastrophic attack. This says it cannot be protected against, it ignores most avoidance effects, and it's guaranteed to hit. Then not only will Beast let Havoc debuff the enemies from the very start, he can also use his level 9 to place Cornered on a Protector. Plus Jekyll and Hyde also exploits protection, so it does extra damage against targets that are protecting. So take that, Groot. Then if that wasn't enough, you have another choice. His Heart of Darkness is stealthy, so that means Groot won't protect against it anyways. So feel free to either use your level 9 on Groot, or your level 1 on Gamora or the enemy agent. Then on your agent, you can feel free to use any weapons with damage over time effects, Brutal Strike, or really anything to debuff this enemy team. In a battle of attrition, you should be able to win out, especially with all the radiation exposure, and when the time comes, you can unleash that plasma wave from Havoc, and virtually one-shot whoever you want. Just make sure you corner Groot first, because most likely you'll want to finish off the enemy agent or Gamora. Of course, it depends on what the enemy agent's using, but you may want to go after Gamora. The reason is because this is a typical team that has a tactician agent, and really, as long as we continue to spam Plasma Spheres, we're basically going to shut him down. Then one final tip that I do want to mention before we basically just play out this match, is that when you're using a Brutal Strike item, it will really benefit you to get Groot as low as you can on health before finishing him off with that Brutal Strike. This way you can completely negate him going into cutting form, and depending on your setup, it can eliminate some extra stress. However, if you do knock him into cutting form, take note that whoever you target out of the remaining 2 allies, the other one is going to step up and protect. So basically, if you want to hit Gamora, you target the enemy agent, and vice versa. That of course is as long as you're using a normal attack. In other words, one that can be protected against. Alright, so let's go ahead and win this battle. Unfortunately, Coward did kind of trip us up, and then Groot apparently uses his level 9 on Beast. That was interesting, but now we're going to use our level 1 on Gamora. And this is going to generalize her, place Nano Plague, and Bleeding. The Bleeding comes courtesy of the Bloody AISO. And then after Gamora takes another shot at Havoc, it's going to be my agent's turn, and we have plenty of quick actions, as well as momentary advantage to use. So first, we use the Signpost, then we're going to use our Tactician ability, and with our first attack we'll try to do what I told you about, and that's use Brutal Strike on Groot. Unfortunately it misses, and we take bleed damage. The only good news is Havoc procs an additional turn, and with that I'm going to use our level 6, that will knock Groot in a cutting form, and that's where we'll let the dots finish him off. Then next, as a quick action, I'm going to use the Improbability Field, and then I'm going to go ahead and target the enemy agent. I actually expected Gamora to protect and get taken out, but for some odd reason the enemy agent's going to take this attack. However, this is one of those situations where I don't really mind because the enemy agent is up next, and while I guess the hit was doomed to fail anyways. So, on what should be the final action of the enemy agent's life, he's going to use the Light Fantastic. This barely heals, and we have a great way to take away that mirror reality. It's called Plasma Spheres. So there goes their heal and some more radiation exposure, which does end up taking out Groot. Then next, with Beast, I'm going to use his level 9 on Gamora, and she will also die to dots. Finally, on my agent's turn, after using the Signpost, I'm going to finish it with the Atom Smasher. And I do have to say, typically with this matchup, it does often come down to the Atom Smasher. Sometimes simply because I can't hit the other team. But as we end this final fight, I really hope that these methods have helped you, especially for those of you who are still seeing a lot of this team. In future episodes, I will definitely cover even more popular defensive teams, so don't worry, there's plenty more to come. Remember, the only way to effectively change the meta is to make agents running these teams see red numbers. So get out there and get some wins. Thank you all for watching, please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, good luck, and take care.